Hi, welcome, and welcome back. I hope you had a good week with moments of breathing, of reflection, and of pleasure in anything at all. I actually had the pleasure of visiting my son out of town, but my return flight was canceled, so I was delayed from returning for a day and a half due to storms up and down the eastern seaboard. I was one of the lucky ones, as I could stay with my son and his wife for an additional 2 nights. Sorry for him, but lucky for me. I share this with you, however, not just to share anecdotes and chatter, as a kind of cautionary tale. People who do a great deal of traveling will say that the worst time of the year to travel is not during the winter, but during the summer, because of the storms. Assuming that wherever you are right now, you are safe and sheltered, let us pause for our first break to breathe, which feels today like a break of gratitude. So, assuming our favorite postures for meditation, for reflection, or just simply for breathing, for a moment, for a few moments of breathing, um, let us just find ourselves at ease, comfortable, and yet alert. And let us do that inventory that allows us to let go from the tightly held knots and places, muscles and bones and sinews and all the things that we hold on to inside of ourselves as a kind of lifesaver, as a kind of safety blanket. And let us just try to release the muscles in our face, our ears, our foreheads, all those creases, our cheeks and our jaws, even the smiling muscles. We can give them a bit of a rest. And if we can just let our jaws kind of open, almost as if we were, well, sound asleep, or we were just being kind of absent and idiots, as it were. And then we can attend to our shoulders and our necks. Our necks always need attention. I've, I don't know, do you know someone whose neck doesn't need attention? We carry so much of all of our feelings in our necks and our shoulders. It's not just the stress or the fear or anger, it's also joy, happiness. It all concentrates in the same place. We might flap our elbows a bit, twirl our wrists, wiggle our fingers, and then turn inside and imagine our digestive tract just kind of opening up and allowing our stomachs to just be. Let's not hold them in. Let's not worry about what's going down right now. Let's just open the tubes and when we take our big breath, let it just go all the way down. So we let go of our waists and our hips. We might even just gently rub our thighs, flap our knees, wiggle our lower legs, our ankles, our toes. And then when we're ready, let's just focus and take that breath. Oh, that feels so good. Bring it in into all those opened spaces. Maybe that breath can even help open up more spaces inside of us. Because if they're opened, they're not constricted. They're not being held tightly. Just open, breathe deeply. Hold on to it. And when you're ready, release. And then when you're ready again, follow the breath into your body. Think about it. Where is it going? What does it feel like? How does it feel going down the back of your throat? How can you stay flexible and open around it as it comes in? Fill it up. And you might even think, if this is early in your day that you're listening, you might even think, I'm grateful for this new day. And if it's later on, it could be, thank you for this day and its productivity, or its leisure, or its moment of joy, its moment of accomplishment, its moment of finally getting that chore done, finally making that call. I am grateful. And I invite you to enjoy the exhale as much as the inhale. Just stay with it and imagine where that breath might be going as it leaves your body into the air. And when you're ready, let's breathe in again. And feel the life of it, the fullness of it, the spaciousness of it. And just stay with it right at this moment. It's nothing more than a breath, and yet it is a breath. And I am grateful for every breath, for its inhale and for its exhale. And breathe at your own pace, whatever feels comfortable for you, but stay focused on the breath. Even when you're resting in between, just stay focused on the mechanism, on the anticipation, on the feeling as it starts. I am recording these thoughts and this time together on the eve of Tisha B'Av, literally the 9th of Av. Av is the name of the Hebrew month that generally coincides with our secular months of the end of July and primarily with August. It's a good way to remember Av with an A, August with an A. Tisha B'Av is an interesting holiday. It is a fairly major observance in the Orthodox community, while there are many Reform Jews who have never heard of it. And those who have generally have only a vague idea of what it is about. It is, in fact, a day of mourning and fasting for the first and second temples in Jerusalem. According to our tradition, the first temple, built by King Solomon, was destroyed by the Babylonians on Tisha B'Av in 586 BCE. The second temple, that was greatly expanded and enhanced by the builder King Herod, was destroyed by the Romans on the 9th of Av, on Tisha B'Av, in 70 of the Common Era, CE. The Romans not only demolished the temple, they ravaged the country and took many of its citizens back to Rome as slaves. For almost 2,000 years, Jews all over the world longed for a return to Zion, to the city of Jerusalem, to our historic land of Israel, in order to rebuild the temple and to offer sacrifices as we had done in ancient times. This hope and expectation persisted for centuries until the advent of the Reform movement in Germany in the early part of the 19th century. One of the basic tenets of the early reformers was that we were no longer mourning the destruction of the great temple in Jerusalem, and we no longer yearned to return to the promised land, as we were now residents of the world and full-fledged citizens of whatever country in which we lived. And to prove our comfortability in the wider world, we started to call our synagogues temples, because we no longer longed to return to a bygone era when the temple in Jerusalem was the center of our religious life and the sacrificial cult. In fact, for over 100 years, Tisha B'Av was purposefully not observed by Reform Jews. It was effectively removed from the Reform Jewish liturgical calendar. It was considered archaic, outmoded, and no longer reflected our values or our goals as Jews of the modern world. It is somewhat fascinating to note how it came to be observed again by Reform synagogues. The youth of our synagogues brought it back from Jewish summer camps, where it was observed as the only Jewish holiday that happened during the summer months. As with many practices that entered our congregations in the latter part of the 20th century, that began with our youth and their experiences at camp, Tisha B'Av enjoyed the same trajectory. There are many liberal congregations that continue to observe this very sad day by conducting special services, perhaps lit with candles, perhaps with the option for congregants to sit on the floor and not in comfortable chairs. Such services include special music for Tisha B'Av, special readings of poetry, prayers, and excerpts from the Book of Lamentations, the biblical book of sorrow over the loss of Jerusalem that is assigned to be read on Tisha B'Av, to be chanted. Some congregations have special speakers and study sessions concerning the holiday and the wider themes of grief and loss and mourning. All of this takes place even as we ask the questions: for what do we mourn? What significance does the day have for liberal Jews? And in a world in which the state of Israel exists, why do we continue to mourn the loss of the temple and yearn for a return to Jerusalem? Over the course of centuries, millennium even, Tisha B'Av has become the repository of mourning for other disasters that befell the Jewish people, in addition to the destruction of both temples. Among the additional events that are recalled and mourned are the Bar Kokhba revolt of 164 CE, the expulsion of the Jews from England in 1290 CE, the Spanish Inquisition and expulsion of 1492, massacres of numerous medieval Jewish communities during the Crusades, pogroms in Eastern Europe, and the Holocaust, even though the Holocaust has its own day of Yom HaShoah. Personally, I do not believe that just because a holiday is on the calendar, it has to stay there. We know through historical clues that there were observances in ancient times that were dropped from the annual ritual cycle for no longer knowable reasons. Just because an observance is there and has been for centuries doesn't mean that it has to remain. At the same time, we do not want the Jewish calendar to be determined by whim or fad or narrow self-interest. So the question becomes, can a day devoted to grief and mourning, a day of remembrance for all of the vicious, cruel, unprovoked, unjust, and unconscionable attacks on the Jewish people, the horrific massacres of so many of our entirely innocent people, can it have meaning and some kind of relevance for us? Can there be meaning in confronting the brokenness of the world and of our own hearts? Should it be a day when we face the truth of the fragility, unpredictability, and impermanence of our lives? Is there value in devoting a specific day to such considerations and reflections? Even if we often engage in such thoughts, is there value or comfort in doing so with our community? How can we adapt this day to our modern and personal needs? Can we reimagine Tisha B'Av to have some expanded meaning? For what or whom do we mourn? Rabbi Richard Address suggests, perhaps this day of remembrance for the ancient temples can be adapted to our own remembrance of things and actions from which we can learn. With the High Holy Days less than 2 months away and Elul on the horizon, perhaps it is a good time to consider reviewing our own life journey and coming to understand the context of our previous choices and actions in such a way that we learn from them. Do we mourn them? Do we or can we mourn for the parts of us we have lost? In a way, perhaps. But how many of us have arrived at any stage of life with no regrets? Maybe a revised Tisha B'Av can honor the fact that we as a people have survived untold horrors, and that we as individuals continue to struggle to bring meaning and purpose to our lives. Maybe in this revision, Tisha B'Av can remind us that we are the sum total of all our choices in our past, that we need to accept what was, learn from that, and move on. For nothing is perfect, and we are constantly in the process of becoming. We are our history. We are also our future. And I would add, we are very definitely our present. I'm not sure how I feel about this day. I continue to search and to examine. I do believe there is value and purpose in asking what it is that we mourn for in our world and in ourselves, if it leads us to learning, to some wisdom, and to growth. Inherent in the observance of Tisha B'Av, it occurs to me, is that it is being observed by Jews who are here, now, vitally, passionately, and wholly alive, even in the face of a history that could have had a very different outcome. Perhaps, if we continuously remember how close we have come to absolute destruction so many times, we will recognize what a miraculous gift it is that we are still here, still believing, and still struggling with what it means to be a Jew, a human being, and a citizen of this world. So let us breathe. On this Tisha B'Av, or its aftermath, let us breathe. Breathe in our presence. Breathe in even our past. And breathe in our hope for our future. When we breathe in any moment, part of what we are inhaling is the fullness of ourselves, with our complexities, our contradictions, our successes, our failures, our disappointments, our surprises. All of that is present in this moment. And our breathing might take us through any number of moods, of sensations. Of realizations of this moment, this second, this here and now. I hope you will continue just to breathe in and out in this moment. But by way of a formal conclusion, I'd like to share with you two poems. They were both written by Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt. She calls herself the Velveteen Rabbi. I haven't referred to her in a while. Both poems were written for Tisha B'Av. One is new this year, I believe, and one is from a previous year. This is the first one, entitled, What Gets Me? Not just the litany of destruction, Babylon, Rome, the first crusade, forced out of England and France and Spain, or how on this day in 1941, the Nazi Party approved the final solution, the mass graves, the gas chambers, or the old claim that we make matzah with their children's blood, or the cartoons that show us hook-nosed and greedy, money-grubbing, conspiring, defiling the world with our stubborn insistence that we deserve to exist. What gets me is that these hatreds persist in every anti-Semitic flyer and QAnon meme, in every synagogue shooting, in the uneasy fear that we might be next. And still somehow we're meant to look inside, to do the work, to seek justice for those who have it worse than we, to make things right with those we've harmed, and if we must, to die like our ancestors, with the Shema on our lips. Another poem for Tisha B'Av, entitled Not the First. Lately, The drumbeat of lies, the erosion of rights feel like constant bombardment. I know incitement of hatred is never good for the Jews. I also know we're not the first generation to live like this. When bad news batters at the windows, I remember the Jews who fled Europe and those who couldn't leave in time. Aish Kodesh, rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto, who buried wisdom in a coffee can before the Nazis shot him. I remember Cossacks, Crusades, Rome, all the way back to exile, by the waters of Babylon. Every Friday night, I cup my hands around twin flames. Millennia of ancestors stand behind me. Their hope still burns. I mean clear-eyed awareness of just how broken this world is and refusal to let that be the last word. Yes, everything shattered. Our mystics told us that. They also knew beneath every shard is a holy spark nothing can quench. God bless you. May you have a good week with holy sparks flying.